Hello, my name is Daniel Gardner, and I'd like to welcome you to the local history club in Akron. It's nice to meet you.
I'm Phil Richardson.
Nice to meet you. Okay, so Phil, how long have you lived in Akron?
47 years, I guess, same as my wife.
Okay. And what was your occupation here?
My occupation has been farming just about all my life.
Okay. What have you really farmed?
Where have?
What have you farmed?
What? Dairy farm
Dairy.
for years, and now we're into cash crop farming. We're still farming.
Okay. Has any type of weathering really affected your crops and cattle?
Well, of course, the last 2 years it's been a pretty dry year, and we're in the cash crop business, so our crops have suffered some from the dry weather. But we're fortunate that we have pretty good land, and we do get fairly good yields, but it does suffer some. We've had better years, and then you have bad years, but that's the way it's been in the last 50 or 60 years in the farming business. You have your good years and your bad years.
Yeah. Was your cattle affected during the blizzard of '77?
No, I can't say it's the cattle suffered as much as we did. Our problem was we had a dairy farm at that time. We're milking quite a few cows, and of course milk is a perishable product, and it has to be moved to the market every day, and at that time the roads were plugged, and we had trouble getting the milk out, but we did have a good milk hauler in a good town that looked after the farmers, so they did get the roads opened up for the milk trucks.
How long was it before they opened up the roads?
Well, we only went, I would say, probably a day and a half. We had to probably store one full day's milk in half of another one before they did get through to pick up our milk one time. But after that, they did keep the roads opened up. Well, what they did was pull the milk trucks right through the fields and stuff like that. They didn't bother just to keep them on the roads. They just had County Line did a very good job of loaning out equipment that would just hook on the front of the milk truck and pull it out through the fields and get to the farmer's house to get the milk and then get it back to the market. So, like I said, the town has been real good in the past to the farmer.
Okay. How did the blizzard of '77 affect you?
Well, probably put on a few more gray hairs, maybe. Other than that, financially, I don't think it had much effect because fortunately, we didn't lose any cattle, and we really didn't have to dump any milk. And some farmers, I did hear, had to run their milk down the drain because after a day, it's not fresh anymore, so they have to get rid of it and make room for more milk. Because the cows milk twice a day, they have to be emptied out too.
Were you stranded the whole time during the blizzard of '77 at your house, or
Oh yes.
were you somewhere else?
No, we were at the house milking cows twice a day. In fact, we had a fellow that got stranded right in front of our house in a car, and he was there for the full time with us. But we were at home, so it wasn't any problem for us. We always had enough supplies and everything, so we made out.
Is your farm near the thruway?
Yes, we're on South Newstead Road, just on the south side of the thruway. The thruway goes in one corner of the farm and out the other, actually. That's just about what it did. We have a lot of triangle fields, and they say the previous owner, that's what made him. It was a third generation. He was the third generation on this farm. It was the Phil Nice farm, and it made him sick because the thruway really broke up the farm because it went in one corner of the farm and out the other, and all left was. It's hard to work with the large equipment we have today. It's hard to work these smaller fields.
How do you work those fields?
Well, we don't have the big equipment that they have today, but we've been pretty successful the thing about it is, I guess, we never knew what it was to work the fields the way they were before the thruway went through. So we went in and we had to work the three-cornered fields and like that right from the start. So we just was used to it. But the previous owner had worked the nice square fields, you know, and they really took some of the best land on the farm when they went through, and they claimed to use to raise potatoes and everything like that on this land that the thruway took, which is, but we never knew that because, see, we didn't own the farm at that time.
No.
So,
Does the traffic on the thruway affect your farm?
well, it's noisy, especially
Yeah.
when you want to talk to somebody. When my wife stands at the back door and trying to tell me something out at the barn, she can't yell loud enough to get over top of the volume from the thruway. But we're used to it, and it's a little bit like living next to a railroad track. You know, they say that you live next to a railroad track, you don't even hear the trains go by anymore, and that's about the way it is with us. We don't pay any attention to the traffic. We don't even hear it, except when I said that if you want to talk to somebody that's very far away. Other than that, we have a few nuisance people that either break down on the thruway or they run out of gas or something. They come up and they want to get gas, or they want a tire wrench, or they want a wrench to fix that, or something like that.
Has anybody ever really had an accident
Oh
near your
yes,
farm?
on the farm itself.
From the thruway.
Oh, from the thruway. Oh yes, we had one time about 2:30 in the morning. We heard doorbell rang, and or I guess it was a knock on the door, on which it was, but we went to the door and there was a young girl standing there, all blood all over, and it was a group of students that were selling magazines or something, and they were heading back toward Buffalo, and they must have been going awful fast because they went across they were going east, and they went across the medium, across the other lane of traffic, and right through the fence and circled out into our cornfield about probably 500 feet and come right back and stopped just about 6 feet before they got to a tree. But I think she got banged up because she didn't have a seatbelt on, and when the car was rocking around going through the ditches and everything, it must have really banged her up. So, but it was just cuts and bruises. She wasn't hurt.
Yeah, it wasn't that serious.
It wasn't that serious.
Anything else that was really serious like that ever come to your farm?
No, can't remember anything. Anything that probably the worst catastrophe we had on the farm was the fire that we had. We lost about 23 or 4 head of cattle, and that was during another storm in January, and the road was blocked, and the fire company couldn't get there to put the fire out. So that was probably the worst catastrophe we had on our farm.
What did you think of your wife working for the school board?
Well, as what she wanted to do, and I had no qualms with it. She still helped me just as much as she had before. She always found time to do what we wanted to do as a family and like that, so I can't say as it interfered with our family anyway.
What about her occupation as councilwoman or supervisor?
It was just about the same. I would say the same thing. It's kind of nice to have a spouse that's into government like that, and so much notoriety and all that. And we were very proud of her to do what she did for the community.
Did you help her with the community too, or did you let her do it on her own?
No, that part of it I let her do. That I had all I wanted to do was handle the farming business. That I didn't get into her. But she used to come home at night and tell me all the things that went on, and I would say, "I'm sorry, I can't help you, honey. I got my own problems." But it was a fine experience for us. I don't regret it at all.
Do you wish she stayed councilwoman or supervisor? Or?
No, not really. She spent her time there and made her contribution to the community. And I think that how much more she could have done being in there longer, I don't know whether it would have made it. We both were getting older and we wanted to enjoy our lives a little more private, so that worked out better that way.
Okay. Well, thank you for to impact your life.
Well, I was in graduate from high school in '47, and of course the war was on when I was in high school, and I remember I think it was the last year in high school when it ended. And at that time they had this selective service system, and everybody, boys, when they were 16, they had to, go to the draft board and sign up and all that. So after I got out of high school, I went on to college, and a 2-year college, and got out of there, and I always did farm work, and I got on what they call these deferments, farm deferments, so you didn't have to go to the war. Well, that worked out for about 3 years after I graduated from college, and then it got to be, I was thinking 36, I think, and I think when you got to be 38, they no longer took you in the Army under the selective service system. You were too old, so they started to figure if you're going to get me, they better, the draft board said, we better call this guy up and get him in the Army. So I was in during the occupational forces, which I was shipped to Germany. I spent about 2 years in Germany. And so that's probably the impact it made on my life. That I had finished college and went to work near Arlene's place, and I happened to meet her, and the Army kind of interfered with our life going on from what I had planned. I planned going on as a farmer and like that, and so then the Selective Service Board says, we want you to serve your country now. So they called me up, and I had to spend 2 years in the Army, so it kind of set us back a couple of years. But I spent my time in the Army, and can't say it was bad for me, but I was very fortunate that it was during the armistice, or during the occupational forces. So all we were there was to kind of rebuild Germany is what we were there for. We didn't have to do any fighting or anything like that.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to say about World War II?
The only thing I would say is when being over there and seeing the ruins and everything of all the cities, I thought how fortunate that that I was too young to be called up at that time and not have to be during the fighting time, because it must be, I would say, must be hell to be in there during a warring time. And I can't imagine why anybody would want to send boys away, or girls now. See, now the women are also involved in it, and I can't see why anybody would want to, if there was any other way at all, to get out of sending people to war to fight each other. I just can't see why it would be that way, but it is.
Did you see any of the remains of the concentration camps while you were rebuilding Germany?
No, we were in a sector away from there. I was in southern Germany. We did, one time I took a trip through Germany with a sergeant and his family, and we did go past one, but I never got into seeing any of it like that.
That's a good thing, I'm sure.
Yes. I saw enough destruction in so many, we were over there, and of course I was interested in farming and agriculture, and we used to, a friend of mine who was a very good friend of mine in the Army, was a farmer from Ohio, and we used to take a cab or something, go out into the country just to see how the farmers, and all you saw working in the farms was real old men or women. There was no young people working the farms at all because they had all been killed off during the war. And so it just done away with that whole generation there in Germany. And so that's my opinion of war is no good.
Do you remember the attack on Pearl Harbor?
Yes, I remember that. I was in school. I remember that. I remember the armistice. There's 11 in my family. I have five brothers and five sisters. There was 4 of my brothers, myself and 3 other brothers in the Army at the same time. But my oldest one was the only one that was in the Army during the combat time or during the actual war time. The other 3 younger ones were just during the occupational forces. So I can't remember what the question was now. I lost track.
Do you remember the attack on Pearl Harbor?
Oh, yeah, right. And I said that I also remember the armistice time.
Yeah.
I think it was a senior in high school, and my brothers, because my mother was so feared that the war wouldn't get over before we got old enough to be called up. And we all ran out in the front yard and just yelled and did everything because it was over.
Is there anything is there anything else you'd like to say before we go?
Well, I think one of the biggest impacts on my life was being a large family. We didn't have a whole lot of money, and I had when I was in high school, we had our class advisor was a math teacher named Charlie Walker, and at that time I wanted to go to ag school, and I said, but I didn't know how it would ever happen. And he says, well, if there's a will, there's a way. And he looked into Alfred, and he says now they have a plan down there where you can go to school for 6 months and work for 6 months. And so that's how I got my college education. So that's probably the biggest impact in my life, I would say. And also when I met my wonderful wife, she'd been a great asset. So that's about all I'd like to say.
Okay, well, thank you for coming. It was nice to meet you.
We have some questions.
Again? Okay.
I had a quick question. How were you accepted by the German people as you were occupying the country and rebuilding it?
I would say that very well. Like I told you, this friend of mine would go out into the country, and the people would just seem so good to us, nice. That it was awful hard to. My buddy could speak a little bit of German, but not very much. But they always seemed to want to communicate and ask about our country and like that. I thought that we were received very well. I thought.
Okay, I get my questions now. Phil, I didn't hear in the beginning, but what town were you brought up in?
Geneseo.
Geneseo.
Yes.
Okay, now when you were very small, was that during the Depression?
Yes.
Could you tell me if that impacted you in any way?
Yes, I would be in a large family. You have to understand that times were tough, and we did. I can remember my father not having a job. They had the WPA at that time, and my father, I remember, went away for a couple times at 6 months at a time to work on this WPA, and we got our food and clothing and stuff from this welfare, and that's what kept us going at that time. That was
Anything else from the audience?
Well, we'll have to just clip that right out there, boy.
It's a good question, like big audience question. Well, thank you for coming here. It was nice meeting you.
It was nice to meet you. You're doing a fine job.
Thank you.
Okay.